blending it with quality talk all of the time right here. We say thank God it's Friday on a day like this, and thank you so much for sticking with us all through this week on your program Frank Talk. Frank Talk is where we look at trending issues and the polity, bringing the issues closer to you and helping you to have a better understanding of the issues that we look at right here. Issues within the polity, issues of politics, issues of policies, and issues also of governance as that affects you and I and affects the entire nation collectively. Well, yesterday the Independent National Electoral Commission (INEC) announced that it has registered 21 new political parties, bringing the total number of political parties in the country to over 60. And well, there was also another major decision. Two of the officials of INEC who are responsible for the double registration of Governor Yahaya Bello of Kogi State were actually sacked. Well, some of those decisions were reached yesterday at the usual weekly meeting of the Independent National Electoral Commission, and they took decisions as to the registration of new political parties and the findings and the allegation of double registration by Governor of Kogi State and the outstanding Anambra Central Senatorial rerun elections. Now, let me just give you an insight into that particular registration of new political parties. Now, as it's at the moment now, Nigeria has 67 political parties, and I can hear some Nigerians back home there saying, well, of what use is the number of those political parties if they have no impact within the political space. But then let me just run down some of the names of those political parties. It will be interesting to let you know that one of the political parties is All Blending Party, APB, All Blending Party. Blending as in blender. Also, All Blending Party, ABP. And then we have All Grassroots Alliance, AGA. We have Alliance for New Nigeria, ANN. We have Abundant Nigeria Renewal Party, ANRP. We have Coalition for Change, C4C. Freedom and Justice Party, FJP. Grassroots Development Party of Nigeria, GDPN. Justice Must Prevail Party, JMPP. Legacy Party of Nigeria, LPN. Mass Action Joint Alliance, MAJAP. Modern Democratic Party, MDP. National Interest Party, NIP. National Rescue Mission, NRM. New Progressive Movement, NPM. Nigeria Democratic Congress Party, NDCP. And People's Alliance for National Development and Liberty. That one, the acronym is PANDEL, PANDEL. We have People's Trust, PT. Providence People's Congress, PPC. Rebuild Nigeria Party, RBNP. Restoration Party of Nigeria, RP. Sustainable National Party, that's the last one, SNP. So 21 new political parties registered by INEC, announced yesterday in the statement issued by the Honorable National Commissioner May Agbamuche Mbu, who announced that, and that development, the total number of registered political parties in Nigeria is now 67. And then also another decision taken yesterday was on the Kogi double registration. And well, according to the statement, I'm quoting now, said, following reports of the alleged double registration by the governor of Kogi State and the ongoing continuous voter registration severe exercise, the commission set up a panel of investigation into the involvement of staff in the matter. The initial report submitted by the panel was referred to the Appointments, Promotion and Disciplinary Committee, which made recommendations to the commission. While the governor of Kogi State currently enjoys immunity from prosecution, the commission took the following decisions in respect of its own staff. Now, summary dismissal of 2 staff for acts of gross misconduct, immediate and compulsory retirement of an electoral officer for act of gross misconduct. So 3 officials of INEC actually affected there by that particular development. And also INEC also took a decision on the Anambra Central Senatorial rerun election with a new court order, granting one of the candidates of the PDP. It's been a long-run legal battle especially for that particular senatorial seat, senatorial Anambra Central Senatorial District. They've been without a representative for some time now. But then, just when INEC was planning to conduct a rerun election on the 13th of January 2018, another decision by another court came on the 13th of December 2017, a federal high court judgment in Abuja declaring Mr. Obiora Okonkwo as the candidate and asking him to return. Well, there are expected to be other legal battles following these again, but then INEC is asking that they be given opportunity to study the certified true copy of that particular judgment before it takes its final decision. So we'll be looking at some of these developments within that particular space, the political space, the electoral space in Nigeria, especially registration of new political parties. Of what use really are they? Some people have said, well, it's their interest, it's their right in a democracy, right of association. They have the rights to be registered. There was a time back then that INEC deregistered some of the parties. They went to court and then they successfully appealed that registration. They were returned again, but now we have 67 of them. How many of the existing ones really even do have impact within the political space? This is part of what we'll be looking at here, and also the issue of the double registration of the candidates of the governor of Kogi State, Yaya Bello. The INEC, as explained in that statement, says Yaya Bello has immunity from prosecution at the moment, but then those who do not have immunity, particularly his own staff, have been dealt with appropriately, and 2 of them were sacked and 1 was compulsory retired and really asked to, compulsory retired. In effect, also, we can say has lost his job. So 3 people affected by that particular development. We'll be joined shortly live on the line now by Mr. Abiodun Ajijola. He is the National Coordinator of Election Monitor. Will be joining us to have a perspective on this particular one. Let's get a hang of these new developments. It's really from INEC looking ahead into the 2019 elections. Remember also that we have some elections taking place next year, 2018, first in Ekiti State in July, and also September here in Osun State. Thank you so much for joining us this morning on Frank Talk, Mr. Abiodun Ajijola.
Good morning, sir. Thank you for having me.
Thank you very much. Well, these new registration of new political parties, 21 of them announced by INEC yesterday, bringing the total to 67. What do you make of it? There are Nigerians who believe that, the existing parties, aside the 3 major ones, the 2 or 3 major ones, have been largely ineffectual. That's of what basis is registering new parties?
Yeah, well, there are 2 issues. One of the first issue, you have to consider what is the legal position on creation of new political parties. And as you know, there are certain requirements for you to create a political party. And once those requirements are met, INEC is necessarily bound to create those parties. As it is now, there is no law that limits the quantity of political parties. So I didn't know a law that says that once there are up to 40 registered parties, there can be no more. Then INEC will say, look, we have 40 at the moment, we can't register anymore. But as it is, there is no law that limits the number of parties to be registered. Then the setting up of political party has certain procedures that are provided for in the law and also by the INEC guidelines. And definitely, once a political party or an association or group of people apply for a application as a political party, and they meet all the conditions provided by the commission, a commission has to register them. So there's really nothing the commission can do about that. But on the other side, I think it is important for the National Assembly to take a look at this matter and see what we can do about it. Because what's going to happen eventually is they're going to have maybe 150 parties. Because I know that apart from the 21 that have been approved, as of yesterday, we still have, I think, almost 30 or so pending applications, or more than that, right? So if those are also successful, we may get 2019 with over 100 political parties. And in Anambra State, we just finished a governorship election where we had 37 political parties, right? Now, imagine that in those 37 political parties, only 4 political parties scored above 1% of the votes. So what you have was APC, ABGA, PDP, and UPP in combination had 99% of the votes. So 33 parties shared 1%. So for me, this is a waste of ballots and it's also a waste of resources. But of course, as the law is now, there is nothing INEC can do. So there has to be another way. Either the National Assembly needs to step in, or there must be a way to handle this. But at the same time, we also don't want to deny people their freedom of expression or their freedom to associate and to form parties. So I think something has to be done to review this matter. Otherwise, it will get out of hand.
Well, give me an insight of how or what it takes to register a party. I seem to have the impression that it's too easy for people to bring themselves together and say we want to register a party. What are the conditions that need to be met for a party to be registered?
Yeah, well, basically, it's not too easy as it were, because I'm sure there are many that haven't succeeded. But basically, you need to apply to the commission. Apart from that, you also have an application fee that you pay. Then, apart from that, you must have a proof that you are existing as an association before you apply to be a political party. So you will need to submit minutes of meetings of your political association, of your association, of the group of people that are coming together to form the party. So you need to be able to show evidence that that organization or those people, that association has been existing. So you need to bring minutes of meetings. You also need to bring the details of the executive members of that association, whether the chairperson or the executive members, the secretary, the financial secretary, the treasurer, all those things. So those details also will be required. Then there are some forms that INEC has which must be filled out. So you need to obtain those forms from the commission and ensure that you fill them out. Then also there will be some, a fee that needs to be paid. There are about 10 steps or so that you need to pass through to form a political party. So these are basically the things. And of course, the commission too, on receiving the application, will have a period of time where it is expected to review the application. And once it reviews the application and it is found to be favorable, then they can move on to the next stage. But if they find that the application is not meeting their requirements, at that point, then the process will be terminated. Also, you must be able to show that you have offices in at least 2/3 of the states of the federation. And all that, because it's expected that political parties and national parties are not regional or sectional. So those are the major things basically. So it's not that difficult, I guess, but there are still some. It's not that easy.
But you just painted earlier on a very worrying trend. You said at last Anambra election, just like 4 of the political parties that participated got 99% of the vote cast. The remaining had to share the 1%. Shouldn't we have something of like a guideline or a law stipulating minimum performance, with a view to reviewing registration of non-existent parties? It's not that if a party is in the political space for a year or two and there is no impact at a general election, that you are deregistered. Can't we have that?
Yeah, I think this is what I was saying, that I think the National Assembly will need to step into this matter, because, as far as I can see and as far as I'm concerned, it's making a mockery of the whole process, So, but anything that has to do with changing of laws is beyond the INEC. It has to be something done by the National Assembly. So I think the National Assembly needs to look into this. And there has to be a kind of maybe a public hearing where people can make contributions, like what you are saying is an option of, using performance to assess. Another option could be, it could be so many variables that could be used to curtail that, But whatever the case is, there has to be some measure that will place a limit on how many political parties we have. Because what you're going to have is, imagine having, as it stands now, if we're to do the presidential election tomorrow, we're going to have 67, that's if each party decides to drop candidates, we're going to have 67 candidates. And you can imagine how long this ballot is going to be and what the cost implication will be to INEC, and even the frustration, because the ballot boxes will have to be bigger.
And even the confusion to the voters also. Having to go through 67 parties.
67 names. That's going to be so long, and it's going to make privacy much more difficult. because you're going to have to thumbprint it, and the cubicle that you have, part of it will be falling on the ground. So it's really going to be very, very, it's not going to be, as far as I'm concerned, tidy. So my thinking is that as it is right now, there's nothing that can be done unless the law is changed. So INEC has no option but to continue. But I think there needs to be pressure to be put on the National Assembly to look into this. As it is now, the Senate has made some amendments on the Electoral Act. So has the House of Reps. But I think they have not yet harmonized between both the lower and the upper chamber. So I think if there's any way that this issue can be looked into before the final harmonization and passage of the bill, all the amendments, I think it will go a long way. So, but I think we need to do something about it.
Well, can INEC initiate the reform process? Instigate it in a way by making maybe a representation to the National Assembly.
Oh yeah, I think so, and I don't know if that has been done already. I wouldn't be able to say that, but I know that INEC made some recommendations on what they feel needs to be done in order to make the Electoral Act and the laws to be more suitable for the dynamics and what we're experiencing in the electoral process today. And you remember the Ken and Amani committee was also set up to look at the electoral reforms. And I believe that INEC also made its own submissions to that committee. And I also know that the Senate last year had a forum on elections in June 2016. And I know that INEC also said they're going to make a presentation to the Senate about, their own requests for looking at how to modify and review the law, electoral law. So I think, I don't know the details of what INEC discussed with the National Assembly, but if this is not involved, is not part of what was discussed with the National Assembly, then I think that the Commission necessarily needs to do something about that and, make such a submission to the Commission, to the National Assembly, so that this can be integrated. Because at the end of the day, this might become a major problem for the Commission to manage, right? It's just going to make the election very, very more difficult to manage.
But sometime in the past, there was an attempt by INEC to sanitize this list of political parties, and INEC was taken to court at that time. Can you just give us an insight as to how that happened, and then why INEC lost in the courts then?
Yeah, well, you know that then we had that was, I think, under the Professor Taru Jaga-led administration, where there was issue of the registration of some political parties, because I think there's some provisions for being able to deregister some of them. But as you know, some of them went to court, and I think I remember some of them won the case, right? And I think that also now puts an issue, because I think what the administration, the Commission was trying to do was to see if it could manage the volume, right? And I think it was very good. I don't think anything wrong with what they did, but seeing things in a perspective might also not look exactly the right way. So probably that's why when they went to court, they had some of them being able to win their cases. So I think the Commission is in a position where it has to operate not necessarily with what it feels is right, but has to operate with what the law allows it to do. Otherwise, if you take certain actions and you go to court and it gets reversed, then there was no gain in taking this type of action. So the Commission just has to necessarily work within the framework of the law to ensure that it can sanitize as much as the law allows it to do so. That's the best thing that they can do, so that we can have a more tidy general election coming up.
Well, there are people who believe that setting of these political parties is actually a means of business for some people. Is it true that INEC gives the parties money, to run, or financial support in any way to this political party? Because when you begin to check the names, for instance, one of the new political parties, one of them is All Blending Party. I wonder what they will be blending. ABP. What would they be blending? So some people have said this is some sort of business for some of these politicians. Is it true that they get money?
Yeah, when I saw that name,
All blending party.
All blending party. Even me, I said that last. I said, this is wonderful. You understand? That is the whole thing is becoming so funny now. You know, the truth of the matter is that, INEC doesn't give anybody money in setting up your political party. This may have been the practice sometime in the past, some long time ago, but it is not now. So when you set up your political party, INEC is not giving you any 1 naira for that. And at the same time, you're even going to make some payments before you find that your party is registered. There is a processing fee that you need to make when you apply for a political party to be registered. And it's you that must make that processing fee available. On the other hand, the commission will not give you money to run your political party. And as you know, some of the parties have complained, saying that, look, it's not fair that those that are having government that are in political office, that are in public office, that have access to the treasury of their state or the country or whatever, that have the ability to run their parties more effectively. But on the other hand, so those smaller parties are complaining that, look, INEC should support them, but INEC is not doing that. Because once you start agreeing to if you want to go back to that issue of giving money to political parties, then it's really going to encourage people, and that's very. So I think for INEC has no involvement in that. I think the commission is not involved in giving money to any political party.
I mean, not even during the general election. I mean, no financial support whatsoever.
No. They don't give financial support to political parties. The political parties must finance their activities by themselves. The INEC doesn't fund any political party as of now, except there was a time in the past, something like that, but as of now, this doesn't happen. So there's no subvention, there's no running costs, there's no upkeep coming from INEC to any political party, not as far as I'm aware. But on the other hand, when you talk about business, yes, I would not undermine some individuals who want to register a political party as a business. Maybe they have the intention that, okay, when I get this party registered, I feel the candidate. So when, for example, the election comes up, I will bring a presidential candidate, for example, I will say, okay, maybe there's a very popular person from one of the leading parties. We say, okay, we are going to step down for this candidate, and we're going to support this candidate. I know in the process of that, they may want to receive some funds from that other candidate. So, so I wouldn't put it beyond some individuals, right? Because as you know, a lot of people in Nigeria are doing politics because of money and not because of serving the nation. So I wouldn't put it beyond some individuals, but there is nothing INEC can do about that, because if somebody has met all the requirements, but his motive is to do some business on that, there's nothing really INEC can do about that. If he has met the requirements, then he has met the requirements, So that's the issue. So I wouldn't blame the commission there. What we just need is to create a way for Nigerians, to be more patriotic, to be more committed to making sure things work. Because we can't turn our political system to a caricature, because there are too many things that we need to get right in this country. Too many things that need to be repaired, to be fixed. So we need people that are serious, that have the intention to move this country forward. So I think, yes, some people have business intention, but hopefully those that are serious and that are committed to changing Nigeria for the better will be able to overshadow those who have this intention of, whatever their intention is,
All right.
And that's what I feel, yeah.
Okay.
So, yeah.
The other side of the decisions reached by INEC yesterday was on the double registration of Governor Yahaya Bello of Kogi State. And, sacking 2 officials, compulsorily retiring one of the other officials, making them 3 who actually got the stick there from INEC. How do you look at that decision? One would say it's commendable coming from INEC.
Yes, it is a commendable decision, and it's a very bold decision, and it's a very good decision. The reason is this, INEC is an impartial referee and umpire, and we have to be very sincere and give kudos to INEC. At least in the past few years, and this started very strongly under the Professor Rairu Jagai-led INEC and under the Professor Mahmoud Yakubu-led INEC, we have seen that there has been a much stronger tendency towards transparency, towards fairness and equity as much as possible. Of course, the commission has its lapses. Like in Anambra, we have some challenges with materials arriving, with some ad officials, but when we talk about the integrity of the commission in trying to ensure that it is fair to all sides, I think the commission has been doing very well in that aspect. And I have not seen any evidence that shows that the commission has been partial to any party in any election or any such type of issue. Now, as you know, double registration is an electoral offense, right? Associated with voter registration. So you are not expected to register twice. Now, ordinarily, the governor of Kogi State is covered by immunity. So for this reason, he is not, cannot be, there's nothing that can be done to him because he is covered by immunity. But the person that is in question that was double registered is himself. So he also has has a role to play. But for the staff of the commission who were involved in that, what their INEC has done to me is to send a very, very strong message to both their staff, to politicians, and to voters that, look, we're not going to tolerate this, right? If you have done double registration as an individual and you have not been caught, not that we are not sleeping, we are sleeping or we don't know what we are doing, it does maybe they've not come up with it yet. So I think it is a message to all voters that, look, don't get involved in double registration. If you've registered in Kano, you are now living in Lagos, there's a procedure for your voter card to be transferred. If your voter card has been lost, there's a procedure for you to request for a replacement. But don't go and do double registration. Don't also collect money from politicians and think that you can register in 3 places. They will have one system, they'll be able to track it. So don't do that. And I think that's a clear signal. But also for their staff, because sometimes, INEC, according to their own guidelines, they have designated centers for voter registration. And voter registration is not expected to occur in any center outside the designated center for voter registration. And it is an electoral offense for registration to take place in a location outside the designated center. Now, government house of a state government is not a designated voter registration center. So, any voter registration that occurs in government house of a state governor is an illegal voter registration and has gone against the provision of the electoral law concerning voter registration. And there's a penalty for it. In fact, let me be sincere with you, there's a fine. There's a fine associated. Those people that were involved can even be prosecuted criminally. Apart from the administrative actions taken by INEC, those people can be prosecuted criminally because the registration is not supposed to occur in any center outside the designated center. You understand? So those staff that went to conduct that registration in the government house have moved outside the provisions of the commission and outside the provision of the law. And for that reason, not only are they open to the disciplinary action by the commission, they're actually open to legal they can be prosecuted because they have gone against the law, So I think it's also a very strong signal for their staff all over the country that say, look, no matter how highly placed somebody is, whether it's a governor, the president, a senator, is a minister, you don't go to his house and register him. You don't give him favors, because what the commission has told their staff is that nobody is above the law, and nobody, no matter how highly placed, is expected to be given preferential treatment. If a man on the street is going to a registration center to queue, then a governor too will go to registration center to queue.
But has it not happened before, Mr. Adejola? I think it's happened before where we've registered presidents in the presidential villa, or maybe governors. I think it's happened before. Before now. You say It's a new development. It's a new era now, and we should leave that behind.
That's correct. Let's be sincere. That something wrong happened before and nothing was done. I think, it's just like when we say that in the past, somebody will steal government money and go free, and today you steal government money and the person is prosecuted for it. So my point is that if something was wrong in the past and it was not corrected, and now such things are being corrected, I think this is very good for Nigeria. It's good for the electoral space, and it's good for progress of this nation as a whole. So I think it's a good development, and it shows that there's a departure from the ways of the past, and I think we should commend that.
You know, there are also concerns about the ability and the capacity of INEC to actually, tackle some of these offenses. You know, during the Justice Ways reforms and recommendations, we had a suggestion to have another body entirely that will be responsible for prosecuting some of these offenses. In this case now, do you think that would have been very good to have such a body to prosecute offenses? Because it's just like one out of thousands of people who have committed that offense.
Oh, I think there is a need to find a way to, prosecute electoral offenders, especially the sponsors of electoral offenses. I think this is very important. And I personally am of the opinion that something needs to be done drastically in this direction. I also believe that as things are right now, setting up the Electoral Offences Commission is something that there's almost nobody that does not agree with that. But the issue, of course, as you know, has a lot to do with whether it can be approved by the National Assembly and it can be, come into law, so that there can be a law that will set up. And if it is set up by law, then it can become a reality. So once again, I think this is something for the National Assembly to look at. But I think everybody accepts and agrees that a lot more has to be done in prosecuting electoral offenders, especially those who sponsor or who are the in quote godfathers. Because what we find out that in this case you have mentioned of Kogi State, it is clear that a big fish has been affected. You understand? And one of the things we need to have in the society is that more of the big fish need to be affected, because the small people usually are either copying the bigger people or being used by the bigger people. So, for example, when you see that somebody has snatched a ballot box, he's usually not snatching it by himself. It's somebody that sent him to snatch the ballot box. So those people that sent him are the people we need to get first. We want to get rid of those ones. The other people, it's very difficult for somebody on his own to just wake up and go and snatch a ballot box, because what will he do with it? But there must be somebody that sent him on that assignment, and I think that even when he's arrested, he will be set free. So for me, there needs to be, as you have said, but we need to have a much greater emphasis on this issue of electoral offenses and following up with those who prosecute them, especially those that are highly placed.
Well, if we all agree, if majority of Nigerians agree that there is the need for that kind of a body to handle that, then what is holding it up? Why is it not seeing the light of the day? Is it because members of national assemblies are also largely affected by these offenses, or they are the main actors in these?
Well, as you know, one of the things about politics is a game of interest, and most times people, in most cases, not in all cases, but in most cases, people will want to allow their personal interest or their political interest to prevail in actions they take, which is not right. It's supposed to be the interest of the nation first before your political or your personal interest. But sometimes it's the other way around, where people promote their personal political interest above the national interest. So I think we have all known and agreed that this is a major issue. So I don't think the National Assembly has any excuse not to do something about this. So I would not want to speculate as to why they have not brought it up, why it has not come through yet. I don't want to, because I don't know 100% what their reasons are, whether it has gotten to an advanced stage or whether there have been some technical issues. I wouldn't know. I don't know the details, but I would say that whatever the case may be, every effort should be made to do something about this. If something like this can be concluded in time for the 2019 elections, I think it will be a great one. If people know that 2019, if you're going to be involved in ballot box snatching, if you're going to be involved in bribing or vote buying, if you're going to be involved in, sending thugs on election day to manhandle people or whatever, that there's going to be a penalty for it, whether you're a senator, a governor, whoever you are. I think it's going to make 2019 the kind of election we truly desire in this nation. And so most times, if there is no deterrent, human beings don't respond. That is the nature of man. So once there is no strong deterrent, people tend to do what they want. But when people know that there is a strong deterrent, you find out that even those that are audacious and that want to risk will be very careful because they know there will be consequences. But as it is now, there is no consequence. I am aware, I personally was in a polling unit in Amodofin in Lagos State, 2015 general election and Lagos State governorship election. And we were about 3 thugs were caught who wanted to snatch ballot boxes, and they were beaten up by some voters who were able to overpower them. And in the process, the police came in and we were trying to, find out and everything. The police were shielding them. Eventually, people were saying no, they